Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another little tutorial slash walkthrough of how I do things in an art program that basically I should have been using a long time ago. But anyway, so this is the What Brushes Do I Use Procreate edition, and this has become a much more daunting task to complete than I thought I ever would end up doing, because I bought a lot of brushes and made a lot of brushes. I made a lot more brushes than I thought I would have in the process of making this entire video, and just getting the backlog of B-roll and extra stuff that I wanted to present to you all. It kind of got out of hand. So some of that stuff is going to get cut. Some of it is probably going to be in its own separate video. But to that, with that being said, let's get into it. So I actually bought quite a few brushes packs, and just to show you what they look like, I bought Vegalia's curls as well as her straight hair brushes. They were pretty good. I made a lot of I saved a lot of time making hair just by using these brushes, and yeah, that's literally all I'm going to say for right now. Just because if I continue, I'm going to like go crazy. I also bought some pencil brushes, which actually kind of work for exactly what I wanted them to do. Like, one of the main reasons why I wanted to actually end up making my own brushes, which helped become this video, was because I wanted to get pencil textures, and I didn't really know how to do that, and now I do. And the best thing about these pencil brushes is that they are only $5 for all of the brush range that you want to get. I will link these in the description. These are by BeeJayDeL, and hope I said that name right. And it literally took like 5 minutes for me to look up where his brushes were. They were in his video, so I just linked all that below. And yeah, these are extremely worth it. The blending stump is probably the best, but also I hate the 9H pencil because it literally does not do anything. But also, if you're using 9H, you're not planning for it to do anything other than be invisible. So yeah. And in addition to all that, I also have the Max Pack watercolor brush pack. I'm going to get the gouaches later, but I started with watercolor at first, and the watercolor brush pack is just absolutely overpowered. And yeah, that's literally it. I found this from an artist I follow on Twitter, and she was not lying when she said that these were good. The brush pack looks like this. It comes with all of these brushes and many more. You also have smudge pack brushes as well, which I'm going to show you real quick. The smudge brushes, they are kind of ridiculous, but make sure that you're selected on smudge, because in order to use the smudge brushes properly, you have to be in the smudge section of the brush. So here's what some of the smudge brushes actually look like, and they are really cool. They are great for making textures on your backgrounds, and I don't even know. I used these for a lot of my mermaid pieces back in May, and they were worth it. Like, they truly were. The watercolor pack was, I believe, $25, and you're gonna get your money's worth like the week of. Like, if you dedicate some time to like working with watercolor, and if you actually like watercolor in general, you're gonna love these brushes because of how textured and simple they are. And that's really all I can say for these. So, in addition to that, you also have watercolor erasers. You only have seven actually. You only have 7, but they are a magnificent 7. And let me show you. So this is what some of the eraser mark actually looks like. This is the first one. The first watercolor eraser actually is one of my favorite, but the scrub brush also works too. So this basically leaves a lot of the texture that you want to leave in the watercolor, but it also gets rid of some of it. What would happen usually is that you would want to take away some of the texture or lift it, and that's like the term that people call it. But sometimes you don't want to lift too much, so you'll lift it, put some down, and lift it and put some down. They're really cool. Now, this is very much an oversimplification of what these five or 6 brush packs that I actually have together are. I think these brushes cost me maybe $70 in total to get, and very much worth it. But also buy them over time if you can't do $70 for brushes that you may or may not use. So yeah, I'll get into more detail with them a little later. But those are some of the main brushes that I have bought in the most recent past/future, because I'm gonna probably buy some more brush packs from these people because they make quality stuff. With that out of the way, let me actually show you some of the other brushes that I made in preparation for this video, and we're going to remake 2 of them just so I can show you how to actually make brushes in themselves. Trust me when I tell you, it's worth it, but you got to be careful with how you do it, because if you go too hard with some of the brushes, you're gonna just be crazy like I am. Anyway, so for my own personal brushes, I have this folder in Procreate. Where's the folder? I don't know. Actually, I do. It's right here. It's called Go-Tos. The Go-Tos folder is basically all of what I use consistently in Procreate that isn't one of these other ones that I just talked about earlier. One of my favorite brushes, well, 2 of my favorite brushes, because I made 4 variants of the same. Can't even see my hand. My hand is out of focus. I made 4 variants of the same brush. They're all called the Procreate pen, and the pen is just a round brush that I stabilized. Well, this first one is. So let me just show you how it works. Let's go red. So as you see, those are mostly curved lines that I'm drawing here. That's because I updated the image stabilizer. That's because I pushed the stabilization of the brush to the highest that it could be. So if we go, actually, let me actually show you. So if we click on that brush, this is the editing layer / area where you can edit this one brush. And also you can make another brush using the same types of settings. So we go to stabilization, and I have this amount of stabilization on the actual brush. So this is at 38%. If I were to push this all the way to 100%, which is the max, and click done, this is how that brush looks. It's ridiculous, but these are the types of brushes that you could use to make straight lines. If you want to, you can take this type of brush. Once I make it available in the link in the description, I'll make a whole folder for all of that good stuff, and I'll talk about that at the end. You can basically make straight edge brushes. Depending on what the pressure that you put down on the brush and the stabilization, you can make the brush as thick as possible, and you can curve it like that. But this is not the type of brush that you want to have in your daily. And at the same time, I just have a ruler behind me, so if I want to draw straight lines, I just take the ruler and draw a straight line on top of my iPad, because I'm used to doing that with sketchbooks, so why not do it here? It makes no sense. Well, it makes no sense in my head. But let's go back to the Procreate pen stable version, and then let's put it back to 38%. Why 38%? Because I made a mistake and left it. Well, not really a mistake. It was more of an accident. I left it and I didn't bother in doing it again. We're going to click done because we're done with that edit. We'll go further in depth on how to actually make brushes again, like I said earlier. But this is how that one works. 38%, and you get all this. That's about right. And then there we go. And I also super affix the pressure to be as variable as possible. So even at the max in Procreate, this brush still can go this small. All I have to do is just add that much pressure, which was nothing. So, talking about that one, I also made this one recently for another piece that I was working on. This is also the same Procreate pen, but as you see, it has the name 3. It's Procreate pen 3, but also it has a crayon texture, as you can see on the sides. And if I show you the original Procreate pen, you'll see, let's try to make it a little bigger. You'll see that the edges are, a little bit smoother. The Procreate pen that I made, the shape is defaulted at a medium soft round brush. So the edges are soft, it's a round brush, it's medium size, which is cool for me because this is what I use for coloring. But sometimes I might want to make something with a little bit more texture, so I'll use this. And in addition to that, I also made this little weird one, which is also the same pen with a different stamp, like almost the same exact thing, but it looks basically like a snake, which I'm cool with that. Hope you are too. because this is probably one of my favorite brushes. It's probably one of my more unique ones because sometimes there are brushes that you can find online that literally just make the exact thing that you want, and you just can't get enough of it. So yeah, those are the three main brushes that I really like. Again, I only use the stable brush and the Procreate pen almost all the time. One brush that I like a lot is called the scattering brush, which I'll show you now. It's cooler if you make it in blue. So let's switch back to our blue. It's a nice little sea brush, and I made this for mermaid, but again, you can use it for anything that you want. And you see these textures here, or this one texture that it gives off. Yeah, this texture is a fire texture that comes with Procreate. So if we click on this brush and go into the settings, we can go to the shape. And this is the shape. This is a fire shape, if I remember correctly. So if we go to source library, brush is actually called flowing. I called it fire because it looks like fire, but it actually is flowing. So that makes more sense. In the source library, this is where you can find all of your various shapes for all of the brushes that you could ever use. And you can make your own, just like how you did in Photoshop. You can make your own stamp and then take that stamp, put it into Procreate, and then boom, you have your own custom stamp for your brush. So I have the flowing shape set up already, and literally it's just a great thing for texture, as you see here. And this is basically how it comes out, and it is awesome, or at least it's awesome for me. If you build it up right here, you'll have this little fringe on the end. Again, just like this, just like the other pen, you can make these brushes look like animals as soon as you start drawing, which is really awesome to me. So if we go to the smudge brush and switch to the scattering brush, gonna have to turn it up just a little bit. This is how it looks when you start smudging. It's the exact same texture, but now you're subtracting just a little bit. You're not erasing, because erasing is just a little bit more destructive. But when you smudge all of this stuff, it makes it, you know, just a little cooler. And then if you push the opacity down, you can get a little bit more texture over time. Obviously, you have to keep doing this, which is one of the biggest pet peeves that I have about using the smudge brushes, but they are awesome just because of that type of thing. But again, you know, you got to deal with it sometimes, you know. Now for my next one that I'm going to go into, the gouache. Well, there are two actually. The gouache the gouache brushes, because they're actually brushes. The gouache brushes are one of my favorites. They are the painting or painterly style brush that I actually started off with when I first got into Procreate, and I was messing around with everything in July of 2021. Wow, I've had this iPad for over a year now. This is time to upgrade. But anyway, it has a very particular stamp to it, and the gouache brush comes almost not exclusively. It comes with Procreate by default. If you actually wanted to find where the gouache brush was, you would click on brushes, you'd go down to painting, scroll down, and you would see gouache along with watercolor and fresco. Never tried fresco, but fresco was pretty cool from what I've seen. How much have I seen? Not much. So I'm going to keep with what I know for right now. And this gouache brush is actually my own modified gouache brush. I made it a little bigger, size-wise here. And then when you shrink it down, it looks like that. So let me show you what the original gouache brush looks like, which again is here too because I moved it. Looks like that, and then when you make it bigger, it looks like that. So the only difference is that I tweak the minimum size that the brush can be. So I don't have to constantly be trying to switch brushes, or switch settings, I should say, in the brush. I can just switch to another brush, and it's the exact same brush, but it's bigger, and I don't have to worry about going into settings, messing up or messing with stuff. And overall, it just makes everything easier for me. You're not going to need to do that for every brush, but a lot of brushes you're going to want to do that for, or at least with. It's going to make everything a little easier. And as you see, there's a little bit of texturing in the gouache brushes, just like how it was in the... There are birds outside trying to do stuff. They're just yelling. Anyway, one thing that you'll notice here is that the gouache brushes have a particular texture to them, which all watercolor slash paint slash gouache brushes usually do. And that's one of the best things about Procreate, is that it actually shows you the texture and it actually shows off in your illustrations, which I love. You know, some people might not love, but I love it. I've showed you all the brushes that I usually go to or use in a particular instance. So now let me show you how to actually make your own brushes. Now I have a lot more brushes that I could show you and showcase, but I'll just include some of them in my brush pack in Google Drive so that you can play with them yourself. And if you have any questions, please just let me know, comment below, or send me a DM on Instagram or Twitter or whatever. I don't know how to do this stuff anymore. Anyway, in order to make your own brush, what we're going to do, make sure, oh yeah, this is one particular thing that you need to know. Make sure that you know where the folder is. Make sure you know what folder you have selected when you're making your new brush, because whatever folder you have selected for that brush and you make new brush, it's going to be in that folder. So I have my go-tos folder selected. I'm going to select my Space Odyssey folder, which is all my space brushes that I was able to get for free online and all that good stuff. I'm going to go back to go-tos to make sure it's double selected. I'm going to go up here at the very top because your new brush is going to appear up here. You're going to click this plus sign, and now you have a new brush. What do you do now? Well, what do? You mess with the settings. That's really it, you know? So we got line spacing. So right now, if you do full spacing, you see what type of shape that you have. And you don't even have to go to the shape area to see what type of shape you have. But now, let's go back and select, let's go back and change that line spacing to something that's more smooth for us. Now we know that this is a hard round brush. So even before we do anything, let's actually go down to about this brush and call it something else. Let's call it, I called it Twee last time in the other one. So let's call this TWEE. Let's call this Twee as well. And I made this brush myself, so I'll name it like that. And let's go, before we do anything actually, let's go and click done and see what brush we have made. As we see, the brush is right here, Twee, and it is not edited in any way. It is the hard round brush that we made, well, that Procreate makes for you by default. Now, what do we do next? Firstly, test it. So we're gonna play with the size, zoom in here. We're gonna just draw a little bit. And you see how the brush looks here? This is pretty much a basic brush, like extremely basic. This is basic brushes that you would use in literally any software. Like, we don't really like that. We want brushes that have textures, or we want brushes that firstly can taper off and look like an actual brush. You know, that's one thing that we want. So let's go make that. What we're gonna do, we're gonna go right back to the brushes. We're gonna click on the new brush that we have. We don't have to make a new brush at all. And actually, we're gonna cheat in about 5 minutes. So you never have to make a new brush if you want the brush to be similar to what you already just made. We're gonna get to that because I've done it like 5 times already. So we're in settings. Let's go to taper. This is Procreate 5.0 or 5.2 or something like that. It's basically the latest one. So make sure that your Procreate and your iPad is updated as well, or your iPhone if you're using this on iPhone. I don't know if it actually comes on iPhone, but anyway, we're going to mess with the taper, touch taper. Well, we're going to do pressure taper first and then touch taper. I always pull these very close in because why not? Touch taper, you never really have to worry about touch taper too much. Size, we're going to mess with size just a little bit. Again, you don't have to do most of that. So now that we made just this one thing. So I'm gonna leave this here for a second. You can pause, set your brush to how you want it, and we're gonna just leave this alone. And we're gonna click done. Now let's see what happens. All right, I made a big old mistake, and I forgot how to set the taper tips properly, but now I did. Coming back to where we were in the actual taper menu, play with the size as well as opacity and the pressure. So the size and opacity are really what we want. And then once you get everything together like how you want it, you can just make this brush your own. at this point, because this is going to be your brush. All we're doing right now is just messing with sizes. If we want our brush to be fully round but still fade out and taper, we can, because we just changed up the opacity, so we can show you that. There we go. That's just a little better. But let's actually get rid of this. But now let's actually go back and do taper. So now we got tapering, and we got this here. We're going to keep the sharpness of the tip just to about 25, and then we're going to keep that right there. Pulling these right up here, they determine the ends of the tips and how sharp they are. So now leave that up here for a second. Now we can actually say done, and now we have our pen. There we go. As you see, this is what a lot of people usually want, and this is basic, you know. This is great. And you can always go back and adjust these to your own liking. But now we have another problem. Not really. This brush is the same size. So how do we change that? How can we do something a little different? Add just a little small stank onto it. So what we do, let's take that back. So now we can go back. So I did change up stabilization just a little bit, so it helps draw lines a little bit better. So now what we can do, we can go to shape. We can edit the shape. We can click import and then go to source library. We're going to only stay in source library. We're not going to import any PNGs from Google or anything like that. Not yet, at least. And let's see, what shape do we want? You do not have to follow the shape that I'm going to pick. I'm going to pick something random. Not really random. I'm going to pick something that makes a little bit of sense. Let's click the wind hook. Let's see how this works. I've never used this one. So now we're going to click, we're going to click done here. So now, look at that. Boom. All we did was change the shape. And you see right here, we changed the texture too. And also, this is the drawing pad of Procreate, so you can always just change up how you do everything here. So you can just do all that. And let's see. Boom. So I like that. That's really cool. So I just made a custom brush. Again, another one. Now, so let's go to the Apple Pencil settings. The tilt is the most important thing here. But you got to be careful of how you use the tilt. If you have the tilt too low, if the tilt is under about 5 degrees, it's going to be hard to tilt the Apple Pencil far enough for you to actually be able to make something good, basically. You got to be careful with that, basically. Because if you don't, you're going to miss out on using some settings for the brush that you may have forgotten how, you may have never figured out that you could do, or you didn't set them right. Mostly you didn't set them right, but it's okay. So we're gonna do a little bit of bleed, just a little bit. What does bleed do? I forgot. I'm just doing this. I'm playing with the settings. I've been making brushes for about a month now consistently, and I don't know most of this anymore. I forget it. I forget it every time, and I just look up another tutorial, because why not? The cool thing about the latest versions of Procreate is that you can see how they work on 3D surfaces, which is great. So now, let's go change the shape to something else, because we're just gonna stay right here in this little library area. I'm gonna click ink sponge just to see how that looks. Ink sponge, that looks cool. And with all the same, I didn't change anything except the shape source. Let's go to, no, not color dynamics. Let's go to shape, turn down opacity, jitter, and then opacity here. Change the size just a little bit more. Now I changed all these. Actually, let me change this to 25 so it can be equal. Oop. You know what? I'm going to change opacity to 15. Now we're going to click done. And again, same exact brush. Now you can't even see that. There we go. Let me make one more little thing that I forgot to do. So I really prefer to change up the brush behavior. I prefer to have it at maximum size, sometimes like this, and then have a minimum size of about none. So maximum size, you can experiment with it because this brush right here is going to have something completely different. Maximum size, let's set the maximum size to 703 because I don't feel like going all the way to 700. So we're going to keep it like that. And also, I like to optimize some of these brushes to be both brushes and smudge brushes. So you brush, you put down color, and you draw with it. And then with the smudge brush, you can take away some of that color without erasing. Non-destructive erasing. Now let's go back here. All I did here was change the maximum size. So now we have it like this. So if we go to 100% and go with 100% pressure, you see how it looks. If we set the size all the way to 5%, we have something that we can work with. Without even changing the other brush behaviors, we now have something that we can mess with a little bit more. We got a nice little texture brush now, you see? And you did all this in what, 5 minutes? So good job on you. But we have the opacity here. We got lower opacity at the beginning. We got, same opacity throughout. And just be careful how you do it, and you will do something great. So let's go ahead and do another layer so I can show you some more stuff. Okay, same brush that we just made, and we're just testing it out. See how it works for you. Go ahead and change some of these settings. And do not worry, because we're going to do a little cheat. We're going to change the settings, but we're going to keep the brush. So what are we going to do? We're going to keep the brush by going here. And we got library open. What we're going to do, we're going to swipe left on the same brush that we have. We're going to click duplicate. And now we have Twee 1. We got Twee 0 and then Twee 1. We're going to click on Twee 1. First off, when you make a new brush like this, go down and rename it. I'm going to call this second edition, because it's going to help me remember this a little better. Now, let's go ahead and change, let's change the shape. Let's change the shape, and then we're going to go change the brush behavior as well. Chinese ink. Let's click Chinese ink. We did sponge ink sponge the first time, and now we're going to have Chinese ink. So let's make sure that's double checked. And we're going to click done. And let's go down to properties. We're going to change the brush size all the way to about 100. Can we do it? 100, 400, 105. All right. Bop, bop. There we go. 100. We're done. Mostly. So if you want to add some grain or some more noise and texture, because noise and texture is fun if you know how to use it right. So in photography, the more noise that you have, sometimes that often means the worst. But if you know how to use noise to your advantage, it makes stuff look good. So if you have a portrait in photography, you may have some noise in it, and that noise may turn the skin just a little different. And in portraiture, that's great. But, in landscapes and photography, a lot of noise is a lot of bad. With us, it's kind of the same, a little bit. What we're going to do, we're going to go to edit. We're going to edit grain editor. We're going to go here. We got grain source. And if you scroll down just a little bit, you'll see some of the coals, the charcoals, and some of the graphites. And then you got noise grain right here. So these are all little things that you can help add to put some twine onto your new brushes. And there are a lot here, and there are a lot more if you decide to, go out there and look for some more on your own. It's really hard to figure out which ones you want because, at this point, now that you know how to make a brush, you're going to be in this particular area a lot. And good luck, because I haven't even used half of these, but they're all cool just because of how they look. Oil canvas is cool. I'm actually going to go and get, let's see. I just saw it up here. I'm going to click, because we were talking about noise, I'm going to click on noise. And now noise is selected. Now what are we going to do? We're going to click done, and boom, you immediately see what happens right here. This is what happens when you change up the grain source. So the grain source here was literally noise, and it looks like grain. So let's go ahead and change it to something else. Let's see. Let's keep this as a brush and not a smudge brush or even an eraser. Let's keep this as a brush dedicated. So let's see. We're going to scroll down a few times, and we're going to click on Charcoal 6B. Now Charcoal 6B looks a lot like noise. In digital, it's going to. And there's no real way to make noise in real life. There probably is, and I don't know how to do it. Anyway, we're going to get off of that. So we got Charcoal 6B selected. We're going to click done, and then you see how it just changed. Rewind if you didn't see that. So I like how this came out. Now, same shape here that we selected before, but different grain. All of these are the small things that go into making your brush. And now, because we changed the brush behavior, it's not as big when we put 100% pressure onto it. Going into the future, that may be something that you want to make sure that you have set up. And you have to be careful with it, because sometimes it may or may not be appropriate for you. So if we push the pressure all the way, not push the pressure, if we push the size all the way up and we start going, we have a nice little grain texture or charcoal texture that we can use. And you can also just go ahead and buy charcoal brushes if you want to, but this is a little way to actually make your own charcoal brushes. You can see how everything comes together. So if you ever want something like this, boom, you can cover the entire paper like this. But doing it like this, it's a little small. So be careful with doing it like this, because it may take too much time out of your hands. And the pattern does repeat after a while, and you'll see a lot of repetition right here. That's cool, but majority of the time you're going to keep this shrunk down just a little bit. Now, for all of you who are thinking, okay, cool, you gave me all these brushes, how do I put them into Procreate? Well, that's simple too. When you download the brushes, make sure that you know where you downloaded them. So I assume that when you download them, you're going to have them in your download folder, and make sure you unzip the file. Actually, I'm not even going to zip the file, so disregard that. So to import the brushes, you're going to click on your brush. You're going to click on the plus sign, and then right up here in where it says done in the right hand area, you're going to see import. You're going to click import. You're going to go to wherever you have the brushes set up. I have them on my hard drive, or my SSD I should say, and I have a folder called brushes. And I have a whole bunch of brushes already here. Let's see, let's just click the hair brush by Vegalia. And we're importing it now, and boom. We have hair by Vegalia. This is actually the third set that I bought from her. I bought 3 packages from her. This is just the standard hair set that if I'm correct. And
a little later,
don't you love it when phone calls just go and you just forgot what you were doing? That point is kind of done because I forgot where I was going. This whole video is a mess. I'm sorry. Anyway, yeah. So this is how you import brushes into Photoshop, and this is how you can import my brushes that I provided to you in Photoshop. And in Procreate, this is how you can do all of that stuff that I just said in Procreate. I have already exhausted myself from this video. In the end, I hope that you appreciated this video. Give it a like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Comment below, tell me which thing that you like the most and all that other good stuff. Please ask questions if you have them in the comments below as well. I'm happy to answer them in the best way I can. I've been using Procreate for about 3 months consistently, actually 4 months now, consistently. And I find new stuff, but there's a lot of stuff that I know how to do that I just don't know how to put words. So this is some of the best stuff that I have just to give you. All that being said, please go ahead and support these great artists who have provided some of these great brushes out here, and go ahead and download my brushes as well that I just showed you. I'm going to include the brushes that we made here today in the exact form that we made them. I'll include those in the folder. I'll include some of my Proco brushes. I'll include the scattering brush. I'll include a couple of smudge brushes. That's really it, because everything else you can find in Procreate itself, or like we just did for 15 minutes, you can actually make them yourself and have fun doing it. And overall, I highly recommend that you get to making your own brushes as soon as possible because it's just fun. And it could save you a little bit of money in the future as well. With all that being said, fully and finally, thank you all for watching, and until next time, I will catch you all later.